GM, and welcome to the Boonafide Experience podcast. I'm your host, Kyle, but really, most people just call me Boona. This is a Web3 podcast where I interview artists, builders, gamers, DeFi wizards, and meme lords, a lot of them. The mission is to highlight trustworthy individuals in the space, share amazing artwork, and build a strong culture as we rewrite the history of IP and entertainment forever. If you're new here and are returning and haven't done so already, please go ahead and like and subscribe to this video, regardless of what platform you're on. What's in it for you is that you get to stay up to date with a new episode every week when it is dropped on Friday. Plus, as a side note, as a general good deed to your fellow community, go ahead and what it does is it gets this podcast in front of more people that need to hear it. So, before we get started with the next guest, I got to give a quick shout out to one of my previous guests and great friend. His name is Michael Tant. He was one of the very first people on here when I started diving into the Web3 space. Really amazing conversation. He's on the investor side, also invests in a lot of Solana technology, has been in the space for a very long time, and was just an overall phenomenal interview. He is responsible for now two people that have come onto the show, and I gotta give him a shout out. He got me in contact with Sobi, which if you don't know him, you need to, and I'll go ahead and link you the episode as well. He's an OG in the crypto community and a great person to follow if you're looking for more info. And for today's guest, he brought me none other than the man himself, Alex Paley. Alex Paley has been a game developer his whole life, and he's built games for a few different companies. I'll put those in the, you know what, I'm actually going to pull this LinkedIn. He's been previous head of studio at Glue Mobile, which is produced a lot of free-to-play games, VP of product, GM at Scopely, and co-founder at Halo Kitchens. And now he's a co-founder of the company Faraway GG, which is producing a free-to-play game with the Solana blockchain financial incentive layer on top of it, which is called Mini Royale Nations. I'm not going to go spoil some of the best nuggets because there were so many good ones in this, but really we chat about the previous games that he and his partner developed, the current state of Web3, the atrocious launch of Ubisoft trying to get into NFTs, and we really dive deep into the title of his game, which is Mini Royale Nations, and we go through all the elements, the P2P, the P2E, and really what really the thesis that drove the game, and really where they're headed. So this is a phenomenal episode. I am so incredibly excited for y'all to get listening. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and let you do it. All right, we're live, or I guess not live, but we're recording now. Alex, good afternoon. How are you?
Pretty good. How's it going?
It's going well. I'm on my third cup of coffee. It's 12 o'clock, so good way to start the day, man. How about yourself?
First cup of coffee, but
Gotcha.
I rested this weekend post NFT drop, post season 1 announcements. So yeah, overall in a very good and rested mood today.
Yeah, I remember when we first spoke, I think the first time we spoke, it was over the holiday, the phone. It was, so I have no...
Was it Thanksgiving Day? Was it Thanksgiving Day, or was it that,
it was
Friday after?
I think it was the Saturday after. It was the Saturday after because I had just come back from my family's house and I was like wiped. And it was like, I think it was like 9 o'clock at night. That was like the first opportunity I had to chat. And like between you working on the weekend and me just being exhausted from like traveling for 8 hours, and doing the full spread for Thanksgiving, it was quite the journey.
Yep, I remember it, or I don't remember it, but it's been a blur. But it's great to connect again. Absolutely, man.
That's it's funny you mentioned the blur. That's the best way I can describe. Since I've come into Web3, it's been like the happiest blur of my life. Is that like I started in March, which seems like years ago. It feels like ancient times, and the conversation was so different then compared to what it is now. And the space has evolved to something that, I mean, we all knew it was going to be something we couldn't really imagine, but it's something I couldn't really imagine. It was just all about 10K PFP projects, and that was that was all the rage, and that was right around Bored Apes, and that was right around Beeple, and that was like there was a lot that happened between like March and May, and man, I couldn't keep up. I didn't know what hit me. Like I didn't know what this thing was, but every waking moment was like consumed. Like I was just consumed, and best way to describe it to people is I tripped down a rabbit hole and I just never wanted to get out. You know, and like 8 months later, that still rings true, man.
Same here.
Yeah, man. Dude, so for the audience, for the audience that doesn't know you, I want to have you give a quick intro of yourself. Like, who are you and what do you do, man?
So I'm Alex. I am the co-founder of a gaming company called Faraway. My career, along with my co-founders, has been all in gaming. So we actually started making games back in our computer science class in high school, and haven't stopped making games since. We were heads of studio at Glue Mobile, which is a big free-to-play company based in SF. And then most recently, before starting Faraway, we were VPs of product at Scopely, which is another big free-to-play company based in LA, where we worked across the mid-core division. So those were games in the mid-core division like the WWE game, The Walking Dead, there's Looney Tunes. So big free-to-play RPGs. And we've always been obsessed with like player-owned, player-driven open economies. We see that as the next evolution of gaming in general. And we consider the blockchain as a tool that enables that, like first and foremost. This is not like we are making blockchain games or we must make games with NFTs in it. It's like we are making open economy games, and the blockchain is enabling us to do so.
That's sick, man. I mean, and that's a cool narrative because like what you'll see is like a lot of people coming into the space where it's like just because now it's enabled, like they see the opportunity. And there's nothing wrong with that, But for someone who I find it fascinating your story because like you this is what you've always wanted. And this is what you've always been attempting to build and making chunks of progress towards. But then the solution came to the forefront.
And it's not just we always wanted it. The players have always wanted this too. Yeah. Players have always figured out a way to transact on gray markets, right? There's always been gold farming on forums, power leveling on forums, trading items on forums, or in these more opaque ways that game developers have gone to just like, they say, I'm going to ban all this activity. But from our perspective, like if a lot of players want to do something and they actually want open economies, why are game developers trying so hard to ban this like very natural interaction between players? Because people transacting between each other is extremely social. As game devs, like you want these extremely social experiences because we all know that the more social your game is, the more people, find that community and the longer they stick around your game. So instead of trying to prevent it, we were just like, well, what if we just make it a core part of the game? What if we enable it? And that's what that's the reason that we're building on chain.
Dude, that's and you know what, I'm like obviously with my shirt and my cup, like I'm a huge Halo fan, and but when it comes to a lot of the free to play RPGs, it's not typically a game that I like games that I normally play, but I find it fascinating. I appreciate you saying that because that's not something I knew of the CounterStrike, like skin trading back in the day. Like I didn't know, but I knew of it. One of those kind of like I knew the headline and I knew some like, easy to digest chunks of it. But you bring up a good point because like I've heard that thousands of times from a lot of other people that do play these where, especially in like RuneScape, like that people that understand RuneScape really understand Web3. And like there was people that would trade gold and like people that would like actually make a living off of trading certain items in RuneScape, regardless of like how legal or quote unquote illegal it was. And you're seeing people like with Axie doing that as well, where it's powering entire economies. You know what I mean?
And why are we trying to prevent that? Right.
Right.
Just because that quote unquote breaks the game design of like a typical free to play closed economy doesn't mean we should like disincentivize or prevent that type of behavior. I think it's up to the game studio to say, okay, a lot of players want to do something. We need to figure out a business model that enables those players to do that. Like it's always been trying to figure out like what is best for our players. And I think we can all say that open economies are objectively better for our players than closed economies where they still pay money, but they just don't own the things that they're paying the money for.
Right. And so, that's and I think we're starting to see that even with some massive, like just on the topic of like giving players what they want, like because before, just to give some a brief history, man, like, when we grew up playing video games, like there was no such thing as like, tweeting to the game devs or like tweet, like, it was very grassroots and forum based, like communication style. And there was not really like, if you just get mad about someone, you go post on Reddit and then they make a change. There was not really a way for game devs to like understand what the players truly wanted, or at least in a logical way that they could make business decisions off of. Especially with Halo 2, all the glitches in that, there was like, they just rolled up. We were just like forced to deal with whatever we had. You know what I mean? Like, just to kind of, I like to like zoom out and give a little bit of perspective to people that are just hopping in and just understanding like, this is not how it always has been. And since the internet has come to the forefront and Web 1, Web 2, and now Web 3, like, this is actually, now that players have a voice, like, when we build community-driven products, it's the best outcome. Like, when you center the community at the heart of it, you can't lose, And so I love your point, like, why keep preventing it? Why fight it? Why do all this, when, like, that's, like, what people want. People are, if they don't get what they want, they're just going to leave and go somewhere else that does, And
if you're making a game, like, why would you go into a hole for 5 years trying to run all of these user tests and trying to run all these marketing tests to try to figure out what do your players want? Isn't it a lot easier and a lot faster of a feedback loop for you to just have an awesome community in Discord and you just post, and 10 seconds later, you have a bunch of people saying like, hey, I like this or I don't like that, right? It's just a lot faster of a feedback loop. And if you've ever made any games, whether it's AAA premium games or free-to-play games, they take a long time to build, and you're constantly trying to figure out along the way, like, is what you're building actually going to resonate with your audience? And having an entire like passionate community in Discord or on Twitter that continues to tell you like rapidly, like answering that question, like, are you building what people want? Like, that's just it's been pretty incredible. Like, we're constantly testing and showing like our players like, hey, we're thinking about this, like, or hey, here's like a very alpha version of this new game mode. What do you think? And it helps us prioritize like, what do we do next? Like, do we need to make any changes? Stuff like that.
I love that you're doing that, because even and we're going to bounce all over the place here, but even going back to like non-gaming companies that allow you to participate in like, first in line product development, like whether you're like in a very early stage. I know Evernote does that. I know a few other companies do that. Like, that is a very like, that feeling of like, wow, I get to help build something and I get to participate in the development of this is actually a really cool thing. And something that like I've noticed, like, especially with like my family's generation, is that, like, it's almost like the companies are just using you to do that. But it's like, no, people actually want to do that. People actually want to like build, and they want to be a part of, so I love that, like, that's like an active part of what you're doing here.
Yeah, people feel like they're part of the community. Like, our mods, like, we have mods that are constantly answering questions, and they're really invested in the community, and it's awesome. And then even outside of our mods, we have like amazing people that just love our game that are constantly helping to build the community and make sure that people are onboarded in the right way or accepted in the right way. And it's been pretty incredible to see.
Yeah, man. And so wanted to touch on that real quick, because I know onboarding, especially it's funny that I've noticed that gaming is a very sensitive topic for, with Web3 and the blockchain. And like, I've seen, to me, it's arguably the biggest use case of like Web3. It's literally a cut and dry example. It makes the most sense, in my opinion. But I've noticed a lot of backlash on Twitter. Like, it's like a really divided community where it's like there's people that are really for it, but then there's also these people that feel incredibly threatened by it. And so when you talk about like onboarding the right way and what your mods do, like, what has been something that like has been like tried and true? What's been like, has there been like a method that y'all have used that's worked a lot, or what do they typically do?
I mean, this is sort of the way that I've introduced the game to different people, and the way that I tell all of the mods or even the team to introduce this game. It's like, forget about the blockchain part. Forget about the, oh my God, we have NFTs, or oh my God, we have fungible tokens. Like, just to reiterate that previously you had closed economies. Now we are enabling open economies, where every single item or every piece of currency that you own, you actually own. And that's the message that we're trying to drive home. It's not, OMG, NFTs are now, we have an NFT drop that's coming up next week. Like, when NFT, when airdrop, when all of this stuff. Like, it doesn't matter. And some games, they shouldn't be on chain, right? Some games, like the use of an NFT or the use of a fungible token, doesn't make any sense. So I think it's up to the game studio. Like, don't force something that doesn't make any sense into your game. And it's also up to the game studio to say, like, when you are delivering the message to your players that there is some blockchain component in your game, Like accentuate what it does for the players versus what it is.
Yeah, I think you and forgive me if I made a wrong assumption, but the Ubisoft launch, where you
example of like OMG NFTs.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like they really missed on that one.
Same thing with Discord, right? It was an OMG NFT type of message, and that's just like, if you don't have a reason to put NFTs into your game or product, like, don't do it. Right? It doesn't make a difference to the players. Like, we are building for the players. If there is actually a use case where it makes the gameplay experience or the economy more interesting for your players, yes, you definitely have a reason to do that. If there isn't, you will get these allergic reactions that both Ubisoft and Discord both recently got. So I think it's just all in the messaging and being like honest with yourself. Like, do you actually need this?
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually chatting with. It's a good point you bring up, because I was chatting with one of the last episode, or the one before, was with Jonah Blake, and he was chatting about, like, we were on this topic, as well as, like, what is the best way for gaming to introduce blockchain. He's like, with large publishing, with large studios, it doesn't really make much sense right now. Like, the people who are going to benefit from this the most are the indie game developers, because they're building it from scratch and changing the entire financial model of a major studio that has made their entire bread and butter off of closed economies and off of them having 100% take rate. That's an entirely different conversation. It's probably going to take 20 to 50 years to even crack that code.
And when you have players that are all used to a game that's done in a very specific way, like Ghost Recon. Right, it had a already large player base that was used to the game the way it was, and they loved the game because of the way it was. Like, I think it's very difficult to retrofit like a blockchain economy into a pre-existing game, or at least retrofit it in a way that's actually beneficial to players. Right, it's not just like NFTs. Right, like that doesn't make something more interesting to players. Like, I think the combination of NFTs plus a fungible token economy is extremely interesting. But if you're trying to retrofit an open economy into a closed economy game, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess in your experience, so if you were to be a consultant to kind of like a large, a large publishing studio, like, what would like the first step or like a strategy be for you? Like, what would you tell them? Like, hey, like, if they were interested, but they're like, look, we don't know how to do it. Like, obviously Ubisoft was a great example of what not to do. What is the right way to do it for a large company? Because for selfish reasons, like, I would I pay a lot of money for Valorant skins. I would love to own those. You know what I mean? Like, that would be a really cool thing if I could actually own the Elder Flame skin and I could keep that in my wallet and like sell it if I need to, because that is a very hot skin that is very sought after. But what would you, like, if you were to go to Riot? Like, what would your strategy be?
I mean, I think that, yes, I think there's definitely a subset of players that are at the intersection of like Web3 and gaming, like yourself, that would be okay with that. But I think there's also a big subset of players that would have that allergic reaction to that exact thing, which we've seen with Ubisoft, which we've seen with Discord. I would say that instead of trying to retrofit like NFTs or fungible tokens into like a pre-existing game with an already very set player base, like, start from scratch, like with a game where you can build with your players. You can make sure that every step you take has sort of a sign off from your player base and a buy-in from your player base, because then you're not trying to retrofit something. You're not trying to like guess like, our players going to have this like adverse reaction to what you're doing.
Got it.
Building it with them this entire time. But yeah, I mean, like yourself, I would also like my Valorant skins to be saleable. I'd love to figure out, is there a way to stake them? Is there a way that I can fractionalize? Can I lend them out to other players for them to use for a specific period of time? So yeah, I'm definitely at that intersection of Web3 and gaming. But I think what it has been proven over the past week is that we might be the minority of gamers, at least as they exist today. I think that minority will grow, just like how a lot of people had the same allergic reaction to free-to-play back in 2009, 2010. Right?
Yeah.
And now free-to-play has become there still is somewhat of an allergic reaction among like
Sure.
true gamers who love these true single player narrative driven experiences.
Right.
But people have come to accept that, like, it's sort of cool, right? The fact you can
Yeah.
test out your game before you need to spend any money.
Yeah.
I just think it's going to take time and the right messaging for players to come and accept the whole OMG NFTs or
Right.
fungible token side of the game design.
Gotcha, man. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I had a sneaking suspicion that time is going to be something that unfortunately is going to be required. But like you bring up a good point about the allergic reactions to things. From like back in like the like we said 09 and 10, right around when free to play was first introduced. Like that, it's the same thing. And I think one thing that Jonah brought up that was really like that stuck with me, and I want to share this here as well, is that like, gamers right now, like one of the reasons why there's like this like OMG NFT backlash and this like allergic reaction is that like gamers are traditionally already over monetized. Like we are monetized to death through these titles, and especially with, we saw what EA did with Star Wars and with the pay to win, and a little bit of like, the free to play economy where some studios did take advantage of that. And that was like the entire model. So anytime a new quote unquote financial model is involved, there's going to be like, nah, fuck that. You're not getting any more of our money. You know what I mean? Like that was a really good point that I never even considered. Cause I'm like, fuck man. Like even with Warzone, like I spent probably close to $1,000 in Warzone skins, last year during the pandemic. You know what I mean?
Totally. And I think, like the free to play monetization model is very predatory for in some games, and some specific publishers run much more aggressive free to play monetization like models than others. And the thing is, I think you're right that players see a new business model and they're like, how are these publishers going to screw me over this time? Right. But I think the thing that they'll realize eventually is that like this sort of open economy, peer-to-peer economy is sort of game breaking for a lot of the types of, aggressive monetization models that a lot of these free-to-play publishers would have typically run. It's like now you're saying that, okay, I don't need to spend, there's like when I open a loot box, right? There's no, you don't necessarily need to keep spinning the loot box and pay thousands of dollars to finally get that legendary skin. You just go on an open marketplace and you say, I know exactly what I want to pay for this. And it's that type of thing is absolutely game breaking for free to play monetization. But so my perspective is it's actually better for the players. It's just going to take some time for the players to actually realize that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. There was when I was entering into Web3, like I came in very guarded. I knew what I felt. Like, well, actually, I didn't know what I felt. I just knew that it didn't feel like anything else I'd ever felt before. But I felt incredibly connected to this. Whatever this thing is. I'm like, why does this feel so good? It's really confusing. This breaks this disrupts any traditional thought pattern or any traditional bias I've had towards companies, towards people, towards sales, towards art, towards everything. I said literally my entire thought process changed. But the reason why it took me 6 months to buy my first NFT is because of the very same reason that we're talking about. Is like I was incredibly guarded. I know that the current market is very predatory. Some are, some aren't. But with I was like, man, I don't want to be taken advantage of. And I think that is a core component to that. But what I've really found is that when you put trustless systems in place that are based on code versus human decision, like the door opens for a lot more trust to be had, and you don't have to worry, am I going to be screwed over here? It's literally based on rules and parameters. Are these met? Yes. Are they not? No. It's weird. Like, the human experience is like, even just getting to know someone, there's always going to be a certain level of reserve. Like, we're always going to be a little bit more reserved when we first meet someone. But once we finally feel that we've met our parameters of trust, then a lot of creativity can really happen, and that happening on a global scale, I think, is like, just to kind of try to put this into perspective, that's every time I get so far down the rabbit hole, I try to zoom back out and remember that like this on a macro level is not going to happen overnight.
Did it take probably just as long as free to play took? Right. Yeah. I actually do think it'll happen a little bit faster than the premium to free to play swing. but I do think it's going to take years.
Yeah. I'm cut of the same cloth where it's going to take years, but I look at how fast everything's moving right now, and I said it's probably not going to take as long as I think it's going to take. I'm gonna overly, I'm gonna aggressively predict it's going to take 5 to 10 years, but it could probably happen in 3 to 5. If it continues at the rate that it's going.
Yeah, and I think we are seeing some really big free to play execs go over to Web3 in a big way. There's almost like a mass exodus right now from free to play to Web3, and we didn't see this when there was that conversion from premium to free to play. What we saw in that wave was free to play studios were sort of created from the ground up, and a lot of the formerly premium studios, they either lost the free to play wave or they needed to buy into it the same way Activision bought King, right, to get their free to play chops. But now we're starting to see a lot of the free to play studios say, okay, we're fine breaking our business model, which I think is super interesting, right? Because there is this innovator's dilemma right now in free to play where they're like, oh my God, should I do something in Web3 that's going to completely KO my previous free to play closed economy business model? And we're seeing a lot of people that are saying, yes, we're going to experiment, whether that's Ubisoft, whether that's Activision, right? A lot of people are thinking about it. And I don't think we're seeing as much of an aversion, at least today, as what we saw with that premium to free to play. Type of switch.
That makes sense. I mean, that does make sense because I've even seen a couple of, I can't remember, it was like head of social
blockchain.
Yeah. And I've seen a head of social from Activision Blizzard in a Twitter Spaces that I was in, and so they're interested, right?
Which is something, right? See, lot of smart. I think when a lot of smart people enter a space, right, they will figure something out. And the cool thing is with blockchain, it's they will work together with the players to figure it all out. Because when I was doing free to play, how many times was I ever on our Discord or on our forums answering player questions? The answer is maybe. We would do a player council once a month.
Right.
I am now probably top 5 biggest contributor, on a message basis to our Discord. And the thing is, I'm not the only one doing this. I think when I talk to Jiho from the Axie team, he might be the number 1 contributor on Discord. I think every sort of founder in Web3, they are constantly talking to the community, getting ideas from the community, and making it so that all the innovations that they're making in the Web3 gameplay side, business model side, etc., they're already sort of vetted by this existing and growing community.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a good point, and it's something I really want to emphasize, and even we're seeing it in gaming, but I've seen it in a lot of other communities as well. Is the traditional way of doing things is that you get to join. Shit, even in streamer Twitter, even in the Twitch streaming and YouTube content creation community, it's very because you are the product, so your time is very limited and you can't really be in there for all of the messages, but that's what people want. And I think if you really boil it down to it, because when I follow a streamer, when I follow a creator, it means I have a personal connection with that, whether it's platonic, whether it's not, but I want to get to know that person a lot more. But there's always a dilemma. I don't want to join their Discord because I don't get to talk to them. Now, it's not to say there's not a bunch of other people that I won't vibe with or that aren't interesting, but that's, if I'm really looking at it, that's the whole reason I joined that community, is because I connected with that individual person. And I think I just really want to magnify that with when it comes, that's a very Web 2 way of thinking. When you come over to Web 3, you're going to get the highest level of access that you've ever had, in any industry before. I mean, getting to talk with Gio on my podcast, talking with you, Gary V follows me, the level, Fwiz, Fwiz, the head of gaming. I mean, I get to have interactions with him on Twitter. That would have never happened with this. When you're very early and you're very new to a space and people are really interested in building something brand new, the level of access to some of the smartest people and the founders, which is what people crave anyway, is readily available. It's honestly mind blowing. and that's one of the coolest innovations. If there's anything that comes from Web3 as a whole, is that the level of access you get to founders and to have a voice in what the community does is something incredibly special that I don't think people.
Yeah, and I think you can flip that too, because founders get like an incredible access to their players that they never really got before. Because previously we would be like, okay, who can come in for a play test today? Like, okay, we have to pay all these people $20 Amazon gift cards in order to play our game and give feedback.
That's a good point.
I mean, the user testing in free to play, I think nobody appreciates it. The amount of tests we would run. Is the art style okay? Like, which creatives are working from like a marketing standpoint? Like, is the gameplay fun? All these types of things were on such like a long feedback loop in like the free to play, at least in the free to play world that I was a part of. But in Web3, right, I just posted on my Discord. I'm like, whoever wants to play this new build, cool. Let's jump into Discord. Like, I'm going to give you all, like, we're a browser game, so we just create everybody test links, and they're immediately able to jump in and play any new game mode or alpha version of like a new meta system pretty much immediately. And it's pretty awesome because we don't have to wonder if people like something; they just tell us.
Yeah, man. No, so I think it's a good segue to talk about your game now. I mean, we chat a lot about the industry, but tell us a little bit about the game that you just I think you mentioned season 1 just launched. So you kind of got some stuff. So tell us a little about
launching in the next 2 weeks, but
gotcha.
We're gearing up for it. Yeah, we just finished the closed beta.
Got it. So tell the community, or tell the people who are listening. Tell us a little bit about the game that you built.
Yeah,
that you and the team have built.
Yeah, so at Faraway, we make a game called Mini Royale Nations. It's a browser-based first-person shooter set on top of a land-oriented strategy game. So this isn't like a purely competitive shooter, right? It's a shooter that leads into a more economic, like land control-oriented, like strategy game. And all of that is being introduced. Right now, we just finished our open beta for the PvP part of the gameplay. So if you go on miniroyale.io, you can play through all of the PvP parts of the game. So that's team deathmatch, capture the flag, like all of these typical, like we have a battle royale mode, we have a rotating daily mode, all these typical things you would expect from a PvP shooter, but we're not stopping there, right? We're adding PvE elements, we're adding strategy elements, because our goal is to bring a lot of players through the door through like a very easy to understand like shooter. Right? If you look at Twitch, 6 or 7 out of the top 10 games are shooters for a reason. It's a very mass market genre, and nobody needs to like ramp up on how to play a shooter. They instantly know, right? It's like WASD and click the mouse. And it's clear what you need to do in a shooter. You need to shoot the other person.
Right.
Yeah, so it's very easy to ramp up, really high top of funnel, and I think that's really important because a lot of these there's so much friction around like blockchain gaming today. Like there's so much to understand, whether it's what's a custodial wallet, what's a non-custodial wallet, what chain is the game built on, like what is an NFT, what is a fungible token. There's just so much friction around that. Like we wanted to remove all of the friction from around like what the game actually is and how to play the game. And that's why we're starting with literally a browser-based first-person shooter. Like with a browser-based game, there's absolutely no installation. You go to miniroyale.io, and seconds later, you're playing the game. And with a first-person shooter, like you don't really need to understand how to play. You just hop in and start experiencing the fun, and then you gradually move through the more mid-funnel and elder parts of the game, which is more around clans and strategy.
Love that, man, and I like how you cast the net super wide, because that to me. Like typically, I'm not like a huge PvE kind of guy. Like even Halo Infinite, like there's an open world element to it, and I'm not fully used to it. Like I'll give them a hall pass because it's Halo, and like they get a hall pass and it was actually really fun, But it's not typically a game. I'm usually like a FPS, extremely story driven if I play campaign, and then a multiplayer, very objective type of player. So I love that you've cast the net super wide, where it's like cool. You get to bring in top of the funnel, FPS people like myself, and then eventually introduce them, because for whatever reason, like there's still friction with me with like PvE, anything. and I still have a hard time getting used to that. But I think this is an awesome approach where you get to cast the net wide. You make the top of the funnel the wide, like the most popular style of game that people watch, that people like to play, and then you get to introduce them to that later. So, talked about the PvP part, So when it comes to transitioning, like, walk me through the funnel to like the PvE. Like, what does that look like? What does what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, so these are going to be so the PvE is mostly going to be around clans. So the whole goal with PvE is it's more of a social co-op PvE where you are teaming up with your clan mates and going and completing these missions. And these missions could take a variety of forms, whether it's like beat this boss, complete these certain objectives in a given amount of time. We're working through all of that. And again, we are asking our players, like, which one, if we have all these ideas on different PvE campaigns that we want to that we want to create, like, which do you want first? And they're giving us some great ideas here. So yeah, our PvE is mostly around like clans because we want people playing together on the same team. We think that's really social. Like at Faraway, our company slogan is like hyper social games with player driven economies. So any way we can create, and every game mechanic that we create like needs to be social. You need to be playing either with somebody or against somebody, and all of the it's like we want to incentivize people to be social in this game. We shouldn't have people grinding by themselves and being antisocial, or speculating by themselves or being antisocial. Like we want like a really vibrant community and a vibrant economy to form like around this game.
That's sick, man. That's sick. And how, like, I want to take just a quick step onto the Faraway GG. Like, how many people do y'all have on your team right now?
I think we have around like 48 or 50 people now. Wow. So yeah, it's growing fast. A lot on the engineering side of things, just because there is so much to build.
Yeah.
Right? So we've been very fortunate to hire some really amazing people. Some people that we worked with before. My co-founder, Dennis, and I have worked together. We've known each other since we were 11 years old. So we go back awesome. A really long time. This is our third startup together. And we were at Glue together. We were at Scopely together. We just go way back. So this is sort of bringing the team back together. And it's been really fun.
That makes sense, man. That makes sense. No, that's awesome. I love that. It's cool because I'm actually going to be able to get to work with one of my best friends that I grew up since first grade. He's just entering into the NFT scene, and one of the most incredible artists that I've, not just because he's my best friend, but like he's actually one of the few artists who actually makes a living off of just being an artist. Not many people get to have that luxury. So getting to see him in the stepping in, and we're going to be able to work on a few things together. Like we were like 5 years old when we met. Like no, not 5, like maybe like 7 or 8 years old when we met each other. And the fact that it's coming full circle, like 25 years later, it's insane. So that's awesome that you get to do that. I love that. So I want to touch a little bit on like, when it comes to the economy, like the open economy aspect of it, like, from a high level, what does that look like with your title here?
Right. So, I mean, there's like a tactical sense, right? There's
right.
Two things that enable open economies. It's the currencies that you earn by playing the game, like are tradable on a liquid marketplace, and the quote unquote NFTs or in-game items that you earn by playing the game are also tradable on a liquid marketplace. So that's what enables open economy. So we have a combination of both NFTs, which take the form of land, buildings, weapons, character skins or armor, and then we have fungible tokens, which we're introducing in the first half of next year. We have a deflationary governance token called Royales, and we have an inflationary utility token called Cheddar. We have been developing things in like a very staged way. So first we had the game without any crypto. Like our goal was to answer the question, can we make a fun game that players are going to play without any sort of economic incentive? Once we proved that and reached some like milestone as far as like MAU is concerned. So we didn't flip the switch on even announcing all of the NFT components or doing our NFT drop until we had over 300,000 monthly active users. Right now, I think we just hit around 600,000 monthly active users, which is awesome.
That's insane. Yeah.
And 600,000 MAU, over 2 million people that have played this game. So
Wow.
those have been some recent milestones that we hit that we've been pretty excited about. But yeah, we introduced the game and to players that were playing the game even without any sort of economic incentives. Now we have people that are playing the game like with NFTs. So season 1 introduces all of the things that players just bought. Like, so we had our season 1 is called like Vikings in the Miniverse. So we dropped a bunch of like Vikings as part of our first NFT drop. Now players will be able to play with those NFTs in game. And we are layering on the fungible token aspect, like in H1 of next year, just because we want to make sure that like we have the systems already built up to actually support and use these in-game currencies before we actually do our token launch. Because I think it's sort of crazy, right? It's like a lot of people are dropping NFTs or launching tokens when they have absolutely no utilization in game. Like for us, like NFTs are our characters, our weapons, our land, our buildings. Like we need to have the systems in place, or at least one of the systems in place to support the need for NFTs. Same thing with fungible tokens. Like, why would we launch a fungible token if we didn't have any place for a person to use it in game? Like, fungible tokens are in-game currencies. Like NFTs are in-game items. And I think that's the difference is that these in-game items or currencies are now just tradable.
Well, and you bring up a really good point, though. I'm going to emphasize it again, is that if we chatted about this on our phone call a couple weeks ago, and you mentioned it again here, is like, you know, without a fun game, none of this shit matters.
Exactly. Like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. The goal is like the blockchain or an open economy should make an already fun game or an interesting economy even more fun or even more interesting. Like, it doesn't make something that is a shitty game all of a sudden fun. Like, I think that's that's an unfortunate thing that we're seeing right now, in the blockchain gaming space, is people introducing NFTs or tokens without a fun game. But I think like this will change, right? It's like it's only be a matter of time before there's now fun games and like NFTs and fungible tokens.
Yeah, well, I mean, you zoom out even further in Web3, like you're seeing it everywhere. Like now that, I mean, everyone loves art. You know, like art's really beautiful and it's thought provoking and it's great to just gaze at. You know, and now you introduce the access of the opportunity to own that digital piece. It makes it even more appealing, more interesting. But it was already there. It wasn't like, hey, NFTs, and then, oh, by the way, we're going to create art. Like, that's the reason why art has shot through the roof with this, is just because, like, it's already really interesting, you know? And now that we can have a true sense of ownership of it, it makes it even more special, you know?
And I think the difference is, like, everybody compares, like, NFTs to CounterStrike skins. But players can only do with those skins what Valve allows them to do. Right? So there isn't this concept of fractionalizing a skin or lending skins. Like, the fact that a player now owns something means they can do absolutely whatever they want with that skin without the developer's approval. And I think that just expands the realm of possibilities of how are players going to use the assets that they now own. And I think it just is that's what I was saying. I think this is players will eventually realize that this is a much better type of environment for them to play in than the typical free-to-play closed economies.
Right. I mean, and to zoom out even, or just to touch on this, one of my experiences real quick is that, like, you know, if you look at like what fractional.art is doing, like it gives me the opportunity to own a fraction of a CryptoPunk, which is like, that is so unattainable for me right now. Like, it's not even funny. Like, but this gives me the opportunity. And what happens is, like, that, number one, for the owner of any asset, allows you to create an experience for your users.
That maybe owning that fraction of a CryptoPunk gives you access to this community somewhere else, right? There's all sorts of things, right? Where, like, owning something can give you access or the ability to do something somewhere else that you couldn't previously do before. So that's what I was saying. I think there's a lot of side effects to ownership that people don't realize.
Right. Yeah. Because I'll tell you, like, I've learned more about finance in the past 6 to 8 months from participating in this community versus, traditional finance in my entire life. It's taught me more about that. Like, I could give two shits about fractionalizing a stock, but you allow me to fractionalize a piece of art and you allow me to like lend that to people. Like now I'm incentivized to actually learn about financial tools that are available to me because it's something that like it's something that I am interested in. Like numbers in a chart don't interest me. Art and video games interest me. Like so you combine culture with finance and like that is just this beautiful like equation that we have right now. Yeah.
And I think for some genres, right, it's like the players are very numbers oriented, like with RPGs or strategy games.
Right.
Very, very numbers oriented. Like I made plenty of spreadsheets in my day playing Morrowind, right? Like about, all about how to min-max different scenarios. Or if you played WoW, right? Definitely made a lot of
I have a friend. I don't play WoW, but I have a friend he has what he does is his WoW experience will literally translated to Warzone because he would make charts about the TTK with the weapons, the builds, the everything, and like that all came from WoW. Like he's one of those diehard like WoW guys, and that's what he like.
And this sort of takes it to another level, right?
Yeah,
it's like previously you were min-maxing your gameplay, now you're min-maxing like the economic aspects of it. And I think it just makes things way more fascinating because there's sometimes in a game where you might just not want to play the core gameplay, right? You might want to play a different part of the game, like in Eve, for example. I think a lot of the best players don't even log into the game. It doesn't necessarily mean that they don't like Eve anymore. It's just that it means they're playing a different part of the game, right? Which is more around this mastermind role, which is I am the leader of this corporation and I am going to control from behind the scenes, all of these different like interactions or whatever, declare war on other corporations. So it's just like, I think people we're finding can play games in a lot of different ways that aren't necessarily playing through the core loop with the core gameplay of that game.
Right. Yeah. When you the fascinating part is that when you give people options, like your user base grows exponentially. It's just a thesis where it's like, some people may want to play the PvE in a more passive way, and some people may want to play the game in a more active way, like in the FPS style. Have you? I guess that's a little bit too early. Is that?
No, that's exactly how we've been thinking. Where we actually think that some people will want to only play the shooter, and some people might only want to play this land-oriented strategy game. And the people that play the land strategy game produce things for the shooters. The people that play the shooter game produce things for the people that own land. And there's that trading between the two, which is very social. We want to make sure we have a game that is extremely mass market, that can onboard as many people as possible. And yes, some people might want to play the shooter, some people might want to play the economic part of the game, and that's totally fine. There's a part of the game for everybody. Yeah,
and the cool part, what you just mentioned, is that both people like benefit, like both sides of the equation benefit. It's incredible. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
I haven't seen that before. I mean that's been the fascinating part. So you mentioned you got around like 40 to 50 people on the team, and you're building this out. I know this is just my brain always thinking ahead. When you have this game, like what do you see once the PvE has been fully built out? Like, where do you see this evolving? Is it going to be another game? Is it going to be just expanding the current game? Like, what are y'all looking forward towards in the future?
I mean, I think there will be a point where we do want to open this up to more like creator-driven experiences.
Gotcha.
So like players to actually create new parts of the game that the developers like Faraway just never would have thought of. And I think we've seen this in a lot of games today where the games made by the development team sort of reach this natural local maximum.
Right.
And then after this local maximum is hit, like there's this inflection point where they say, now we're going to enable users to take over and make these really weird types of experiences. And those are games like, obviously there's Roblox. Minecraft started as a survival game, but is now whatever they want it to be, right? There's GTA, which has turned from a shooter and the game to now a role-playing game.
Right.
Fortnite, the biggest, I think, Fortnite has creator mode. The biggest mode in creator mode is a fishing mode. I don't think Epic would have said, we're going to make a fishing game now. I think they just said, we have now reached this local maximum where we're going to enable players who absolutely love the Fortnite universe to make stuff that they think will resonate inside the Fortnite universe. And
Yeah.
I think we will reach that natural inflection point in Mini Royale, where Faraway, as like the dev team, will
Right.
have sort of tapped out like what are all of like the mid-core
Yeah.
ideas that we can put into a shooter plus strategy game, and then we're going to start getting some like weird emergent types of mechanics introduced by our players. But I think that's needed, and I think it's super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome because like one of the best use cases or one of the best examples of that is Skyrim. You know, like the modding community with Skyrim, like that game has
crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's been around for so long because
they needed it. Like,
yeah.
Imagine Skyrim without mods. Like,
right.
It wouldn't be around anymore. It wouldn't be relevant.
Right.
And I think Skyrim, like you said, reached that natural inflection point. Then they said, like, you know what? We're going to enable players to do really weird stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's still streamed on Twitch. I think it's still, maybe was it top 50 at least?
Yep.
Games on Twitch.
Yep.
And yeah, it's still a really vibrant community from like a modding aspect. And that's awesome.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I like that you broke that down because like that makes a little bit more sense because that was always a question I had in my head. Like when is the time to introduce that? When is the time to allow that to happen? When is the time to, for allowing the community to kind of just like basically take control of the game or at least some control of the game?
So I don't think it's immediately. I think the developer needs to at least start by introducing like, here's sort of a starting sandbox. Like here's like starting mechanics like that you need to sort of make this game make sense. Here's like starting tools that a creator would need to make new things on top of this existing base layer. So I think it's going to be a few years at least until we get to that point. But after that, we'll be comfortable saying, make whatever you want, and I think that's how we reach the level after that. Right now, we're still, building furiously. We're building the airplane as we're flying it.
Right.
But there will be a point where, we will have tapped out our own imagination, and then we need to expand it.
Gotcha, man. No, that's awesome. And I guess last question. This feeds the esports hunger in me. Do you see the FPS portion becoming like a title that's ever like where you guys have competitions where there's prize pools and televised and stuff like that? Do you see that happening?
Yes, it's a really good question. We definitely will have tournaments. I don't know if I ever see it becoming like an esport, just because we want this thing to be more than just a competitive shooter, right? It's going to have PvE components. It's going to have the strategy components. And eventually, we're going to open it up so that players can make weird sorts of modes. So we don't necessarily want to go all in on this competitive shooter narrative because honestly, Valorant or CSGO are probably better competitive shooters than Mini Royale. And they have how many years, of people on those teams making competitive shooters. For us, like our goal is how do we build really vibrant economies and really social like experiences, and like how do we build these experiences for everybody, not just a competitive set. So yeah, I think long story, yes, we will definitely have tournaments. People already are playing tournaments and private matches. It's super cool to see. Obviously, we want to incentivize people to, if they like that, like, yeah, we want to incentivize people to do more of it. But I don't know if we'll ever necessarily go down the competitive esports route. Got
it. No, I appreciate that. It's a good answer. Well, man, want to start wrapping things up, Alex, man. This has been a treat having you on. I think we've gone over a lot of different areas.
Awesome.
Yeah, dude. This has been good. I always like to touch it with some, like a piece of advice from you to someone new coming into the scene. Like, so say you're coming into just in Web3 in general, not even gaming, not even like, just what would be like the first place that you would go to like start understanding, what this is all about and where they can participate and get started?
Twitter. Like just start reading, drink from the fire hose of crypto Twitter.
Yep.
There's a lot of noise, but as long as you sift through the noise, follow some of the right people, you'll start hearing a lot of pretty interesting ideas. Vitalik writes some amazing blog posts on like the types of things that are enabled by like the blockchain. And I think it's like, I encourage everybody when they come into this space, like, don't just come in because you're excited about like OMG NFTs. This is like, I'm going to make money fast. Like, come in because you're excited about what the blockchain does for your users or your players or whoever you're building something for. Because like NFTs have a utilization, so do tokens. Like in the end, like they need to have a use. It can't just be NFTs for the sake of NFTs.
Right. I love that. And just want to touch on one more thing. Who are like the top, let's call it 3 people that you'd follow as like trusted source of information outside of Vitalik?
Oh my God. Amy Wu from Lightspeed on the gaming and Web3 side of things. Obviously SBF from FTX, and probably like Tolly from Solana, Anatoly from Solana, who just has like a fun mixture of very technical things that he's solving with Solana, plus some just funny tweets overall.
I love it, man. I love it, man.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, man, again, it's been an absolute treat. Thanks again for accommodating some of the wacky schedules of mine. So I'm glad we got to do this, man.
This was really, really great.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I'm going to let you get to it. You have a great rest of your day, man. Awesome. And we'll be in touch.
I'll talk to you. Bye.